Dear friends, colleagues, and participants online, welcome to our fourth lecture in our autumn lecture series. Tonight we're presenting something very different from what we used to present. It's about late Neolithic times in Norway, and it's actually the discovery of a gallery grave in Western Norway at a site called Selje. This is an opportunity to present to the Greek audience some of the research done in Norway currently in the domain of prehistory, something really underexplored in Greece. And I'm very, very happy and honored to present Dr. Morten Ramstad and Dr. Konrad Smiarowski from the University Museum, both archaeologists. I should also say, for those who are not very familiar with the Institute, that the University of Bergen has been our sole owner and manager since 2021. So we're particularly happy to welcome two Bergen colleagues tonight. And recently, the Institute has embarked on what seems to be a very promising collaboration with the University Museum in Bergen. So it's very timely to have you both with us. Dr. Morten Ramstad is the head of the Cultural Heritage section at the University Museum. He has an extensive archaeological experience in field research. And he's also focusing very much on fishing and hunting activities, burial monuments, and climate change impinging upon cultural heritage in the North Atlantic. Similarly, Konrad is also a researcher at the University of Bergen. He holds a research position at the university. And he's an archaeologist, an environmental archaeologist with special focus on zooarchaeology, and has been studying for more than 20 years human ecodynamics in the Arctic. At the same time, Dr. Smiarowski has been excavating extensively in the northern regions, including the United States, Canada, Greenland, Iceland, Norway, Denmark, Poland, and the Caribbean. So I'm actually grateful to both of you for agreeing to present your joint work at the Norwegian Institute. With no further ado, the floor is yours, and thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, thank you for these kind words. And we'll see how it goes. I had big problems until like 20 minutes ago. So for the last 3 hours, I'm in fact been trying to save it. There was some like problems with the internet. Therefore, also I feel I'm not that prepared as I should have been, but we will see how it goes. Here we see Selje. I took like an old picture because you can still see the connection with the place and the sea, which is obvious. And it's not a Greek landscape, but also there's some similarities with islands, of course, and big fjord systems. And the site is actually here. And you should see another thing also, which is common all the way around the Norwegian coast, is in front of the church here, you see a line of boathouses, because you need these ones, especially in the winter time, to store your boats and have them secure. But I think we'll start around here. And I'll see if I can make it a bit bigger inside here. This text here. Oh, let us see. Okay, around 9000 BC, that was the situation we looked about along the Norwegian outer coast. The inner lands will be covered with the inland ice. And at that time, something happened. People came to Norway for the first time, we think. And these were people that probably 3000 years before came down to Denmark. And they came from the valley systems and tunnel valleys of the now floated Doggerland and Germany and Central Europe. And they stayed like for roughly 3,000 years in Denmark and southern Sweden before they colonized this coast. And one think that the reason for that isn't because it wasn't any animals there, it must have been extremely rich in marine resources, but they didn't have the technology. Because what you need, of course, is one thing, you need seafarty boats, and you need the technology how to use and exploit these areas. This picture is from the field school we have at the university. And here we have one of the students, she's now working at us, and she found like things from these people like that is 11,000 years. And these people are genetically like linked to the what we call the eastern, no, western hunter and gatherers, which is like the people colonizing Scandinavia at that time. And yeah, I already said that, had the stop. And what we see is that the artifacts we have along the coast here is basically the same. So it means that these people must have extremely large social networks. The artifacts also from that period looks the same in northern Germany and Denmark. So the sea already at that time wasn't something that divided, it was connecting people. Um, and of course, when you can use this extremely like rich area with like an abundance of sheltered seascapes, there are so many marine resources. If you think about, and there, in fact, Greek is a quite similar example. If you think about Denmark or Netherlands, 1 kilometer of coast is about 1 kilometer of coastline. But here, 1 kilometer of coast, if you take a radius, is 30 kilometers of shoreline, which means that you can fish, of course, a lot inside like a smart coral area, and it's also really, really rich. It's among the richest like marine biotopes in the world. And what we know also when they colonized it, first from the south, it probably took like a few generations. We can't see it in the 14th, coming from the southern Norway to the top, and that's a distance that is roughly the same from the capital Oslo to Rome. So it's a huge area they do. And a little bit afterwards, it's a bit debated, but we think that you have these eastern hunter-gatherers coming in. But basically from the south, is western hunter-gatherers. And here is the place that we saw Janne finding the things. You're sitting here and finding these artifacts. And what's also beautiful with the Norwegian outer coast, which is maybe like on a World Heritage level, we are one of the few places in the world, apart from Norway, I think Patagonia, that still have intact the shorelines from the early Mesolithic and all the way up to today. Because they flooded basically other places. And what we have here, this site here is about 12 meters. So when you stand there, you can see where the good harbor is. It's exactly the same place as you saw it there. So you have a total understanding immediately. And here we have a little reconstruction of these people. You see the big boat, like we have had it like as an Umex style, like boat. So we think they are like these people are almost like sea nomads, and they are traveling a lot, and they bring all the equipment down, but masters of the sea for sure. But of course, it's not this we're going to talk about. It's the Selje grave. For nearly 7,000 years, the only thing that people lived off in Norway was either like inland hunter-gatherers or hunter-fishers along the coast. But 7,000 years ago, something happened. No, after 7,000 years, something happened. Around 4,000, 4002, before present day, 2004 or 5 before Christ, agriculture came to Western Norway. And we know it from the artifacts and the houses, but we don't know anything of these people, or very little, because we haven't had their graves until now. And that was the discovery of which we're going to talk about, is this galley grave at Selje, which is what we see here is the members of this first like agricultural um, communities. So somehow this is like the first like it's a place where we see not only dispersed farmers, but also there's a particular mix in economy and also lifestyle with the early Mesolithic traditions, and that had been there for like 7,000 years, and that was something we didn't expect. So the next 45 minutes, we will ask who were these farmers, how did agriculture come up to Norway, Western Norway, and what can Selje reveal about the neolithization of the North Atlantic coast? But a little bit of background. The University Museum did that as part of a rescue excavation. And in Norway, you have 5 university museums, and we act as national museums in our region. So University of Bergen is like the national museum for Western Norway. We have the collections, and we do all the excavations. At that place, it was an extremely important place for the local fishing community. We see the site down here. Uh, uh, the hotel had had some problems for a few years. They were trying to make some tourism, and then some Swedes, our neighbors, some guys there, they bought it, and they burned it down like a fraud. And then it went a few years, and now some local investors tried to build a hotel there. So that's the reason I did the discovery. The discovery also got like extremely a lot of publicity. We even had like my daughter sent me this TikTok thing from American, and so it got quite viral, and that's not that common because when we have Viking stuff, it goes all around the world, but not that often with these things. And we also got visits from the director of Riksantikvaren, the Norwegian director for Cultural Heritage. Here we see her, and there we see director, which also was very beneficial for us because we got a lot of extra funding from Riksantikvaren. So they've been really, really kind to us. There's quite many people working at UB also. Konrad is the project leader. Then we have 4 other archaeologists. She's also a zoo archaeologist. We have Lene, that's the botanist. We have Jon Inge, who's working on the shoreline replacement curves. Øystein Jansen is working with the grave slabs. And we have a master student who just delivered who worked on possible ochre in the grave. And we had some seminars. Someone new with Daniela, in fact, that was a big seminar we had about the things where colleagues came a year ago to visit us and discuss the finds. There's also other universities involved. We had the guys up in Tromsø doing sedentary DNA, which we have sampled. I don't know if you're going to mention it or not, but yeah. No. Yeah. And then we have DNA that we do with SciLife Lab in Sweden. And then we have Anna here, which is a central figure who's done all the human bones or head of that. Another thing I should mention, but I think you saw it also in the picture, is of course Norway is not the best land for agriculture. And Western Norway is among the purest. So about or less than 0.5% of Western Norway is agricultural land. So therefore, like outfield resources, also dairy products, is extremely important. But the sea has always been central. Yeah, we have Selje, the place we are. Bergen is down here, and we are up here. And this thing we see here is Stadlandet. Here is Selje, here is Selje. They're quite similar, like these places. This Stad place is one of the most exposed stretches of sea in Europe, in fact. And whereas inside the fjords, we have a lot more sheltered areas. So what we see is that Selje is just between that extremely exposed coast and is sheltered inland areas. And they were, in fact, planning to build a tunnel on there. There is debate on it now for the ships because it's so difficult to go around. So we have to think about that during the past. We know that from the Viking Age and later, people must have stayed here waiting for weather conditions to be good. And that's something that probably goes back all the way to the Stone Age. There's also like another thing here. It's a remote place now. It takes a good 6-hour drive to Bergen, but it wasn't so in the past. There was a monastery here, out there, and we see it here. And it was the Benedictine monastery and devoted to the cult of Sunniva. And the thing was it like Selje was like the first episcopal seat in Western Norway. And the other thing, and that's the Greek connection. Before the Great Schism, it was formed like in 1000 AD. So it's still a place that patrons both from the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church go for pilgrimage. So that's quite special. But it says something also about how this place is linked both like to like old systems of communication, and also that it's there's a lot of like history linked to like faith and rituals and other things. The farmers here in this area, they are usually like what we call fish farmers. Here we see the houses, they're out with here in fact that going to Bergen, and the thing behind there is a way to keep the fish alive into they come to town. And here I've just been working and droning a site. I'll show you the farm because it's not so easy to see. The farm is here. So it's extremely exposed to the sea. So the fish farmer is a farm that is basically characterized by a few cows, one or two. One is quite common, some goats and sheep, but the primary resources is the sea and marine resources. Whereas Selje, in fact, stands out a little bit in this perspective. This is the best farm in the area. And of course, compared to a southern Scandinavian perspective, it's not a good farm. But in this local perspective, it's good. It has a good harbor and it's pretty well protected. So it must be in like a really, really central place for the first like agriculture to sit down, especially due to this hybrid adoption where you can both have some farming land and you can exploit the sea. Oh, a little bit faster. Let me see. Yeah, I won't go in that so much, but I will tell you a little bit about it. Like we have 120 radio dates from the site, and we have three main phases: the late Neolithic one, the late Bronze Age, and the Iron Age. Uh, the whole area is covered by Aeolian sands, and of course there's a deep history also of agriculture here, which we can trace to the profiles. And here we see the interplay between people, climate, vegetation, change, and shifting agricultural practices. We see these different dark layers here. Up here we see claw marks, these things. So it's nicely sealed off the different phases. And without going into details here we see the excavation area. It's a bit chaotic with the machine and everything. But the most important thing, we have these successive layers of wind-blown sand, which have sealed the site, like I say, like pages in a book. So it's quite fantastic. Of course, it's not that straightforward, as I say here, but it's pretty straightforward. We have several middens, we have 5 burial complexes, some are quite nice, and we have houses, cultivation areas, and a lot of different features. And of course, we have some artifacts also. This is how it looks like in a drawing, the phase that we are going to look upon, the one that is 2200 to 1800 BC roughly, which is the pretty early in the late Neolithic for us. The grave we can see is here. We have some houses and some fields and stuff like that. And we think it would have looked something like this. And with these words, I will hand over to Konrad.
Thank you. So you can see the grave is very close to the shore. Yes. Yes. So I'll take over and just talk about the zooarchaeology and the human osteology part of the project. Because in the Neolithic phase, we had two major parts that we can do quite a bit of analysis on, and that's the grave and the middens. This picture is to sort of give you an idea of the preservation conditions. Much of the bones here are from the later periods, the Bronze Age and early Iron Age, but the substantial part of it is actually the Neolithic midden as well. A lot of it is shellfish, several different types. Most of it is, apart from that, are different types of fish. Very important, of course, in Norway. And then as also represented by these antler fish hooks, which are about this big, for quite large fish, and other sort of fishing-related implements. Just good sort of photo from the field in the middle of excavation. And this is one of our deep stratified middens, and there were several of them in very different parts of the site. Bama's were archaeologists, so I warned already some of you that there will be graphs. And here they are. The Neolithic midden was rather small compared to what we have from other time periods, because it was in a place where a bunch of it was going into the area which wasn't developed, so it's still there, and part of it was going under high voltage electric cables. But what we were able to get is quite amazing, and we were able to radiocarbon date it quite securely on land mammals or on red deer to late Neolithic. Unfortunately, we have this quite large plateau at that time, so probably not going to be able to pinpoint it much more than that. We were hoping, and based on previous research in Norway, and I should probably mention this, that Western Norway has acidic soils and preservation conditions for organic material are usually quite poor. This was a different different case because we had these amazing shell sand layers, which were rich in calcium, and they were preserving the bonds quite well. I mean, as you can see, all of this is very calcium-rich sand. The previous research and previous excavations that had any bone preserve, either human or animal, were from rock shelters and caves in Western Norway. And that's, of course, specialized sites, which they don't really represent what open settlements would have been. But in those shelters, we had very high range of animals, from seals to deer to carnivores to all different types of animals. So we sort of expected the same happening at Selje, but it wasn't really the case. In terms of mammals, we actually only really had red deer. That was the only large mammal. There were animals from all different age groups. So we had young ones, as you can see in this photo. We also had quite large adult males. And the bones were broken into fragments, most of them indicating feasting, eating, marrow extraction. We had, as I mentioned before, hooks made of antler. So that was an important animal. Also in the Neolithic, throughout the different regions, red deer has a special place in sort of customs and beliefs and rituals. But in our case, or at least in this case, it seemed that we were getting the sort of bone, meat-rich parts of the deer. That's the blue filled in bones. So they were not bringing the whole animal with them, but they were definitely bringing the meat, the important ones. This also being Norway, it's very important because of fish. Fish has always been important. It's on currency in Norway, and we have majority of the midden came from the three species. It's the cod, the saithe, and ling. Cod and saithe are, I mean, they're all gatid species, so they're from the same family. They have very similar habitats. They are, they have always feeded near the bottom, so we're talking about 20 meters or more. So through the archaeological analysis, we looked at the bones, and we would show several different. So it's sort of let's say each red graph represents different part of the head of the fish, and we wanted to see how many species of each. So this is sort of the average of everything. And almost 70% of the midden is cod, followed by saithe, and ling is probably not targeted, but it's because it's the same habitat. It's caught accidentally. So they're really focusing on these two species. And cod is and saithe, they have migration patterns. They vary a little bit, but it's about feeding, it's about spawning, and sometimes they come from very long distances, like first halves from Lofoten and the actual Arctic. So there has been a lot of research done on cod, on fish in Norway and in general in North Atlantic. And the one big the consensus is that in the Viking Age, going into early medieval period, catching cod of specific size and drying it, air drying it, produced sort of surplus product which could be stored for years. And this has to be special conditions in the winter with wind, with temperatures, with moisture in the air. So the evidence of that dates back all the way to the Viking Age. So then we looked at our code in Selje, and we're kind of seeing the same thing happening, which is quite huge. But the methods behind it is basically the fish is caught, it's gutted, it's split, and it's air dried, and then it's beheaded first, and then the product leaves, and then the heads and some of the vertebra stay on site. So one way of looking at whether it's a production site or it's consumption site is seeing whether you have present bones from the head and how much of them versus the vertebra. We have, these have been all heads. So we definitely have a production site. We have a production site for the right species. And we started looking at the vertebra as well. And it looks like it's not that much vertebra present. Most of them are from this region, which usually is gutted. So all sort of this much goes with the fish, this stays. And we have that signature. Another way, it has to be in addition to other methods. Another way is basically trying to find out how large the fish was and whether it fits particular size, which is not too small to dry too fast and be inedible, or too large so it rots. So it fits in this sort of 60 to 110 centimeters, 60 window, let's say. But I just wanted to make a point here because this being winter, maybe fall fishing, it's a resource, as Morten said, that's available without really much effort. I mean, the effort is the boat and actually capabilities of surviving on that boat and getting the fish, but you don't need to raise the animals. And these are about 10-kilo fish, quite a lot. And from historical data, about one lamb in Norway would provide about 12 to 18 kilos of pure meat, discounting the bones. So think about how much easier is it to get a lot of fish versus trying to raise animals on the land that Morten just showed. Without going to details, I mean, the measurements are taken on several different skull fragments, and then we can extrapolate the actual sizes. So basically, this is for saithe and cod, and you can see it fits within that sort of 600 to 60 centimeters to 110, 120 in general. Which is surprising because we didn't know that this was happening that far in the past at all. This is also drying without any salt, so it's all air dried. So this is the window, so just put it over our graphs. It sort of fits quite nicely. And just a comparison to the classic examples of that definitely happening. And this is a cod producing site in Iceland. They are there, huge numbers in medieval period, just getting dry fish out. And that's from northern Norway, from several different places, just showing different variation of cod. There is smaller and large one, but majority is really, the target is the that size cod. And this is happening until now. It's one of major Norwegian industries, air dried cod. just very briefly, we thought like, okay, well, this looks great, just a bit of deer. Maybe this is just a midden that's like being a slaughter area. But it's not. It's also parts of the bones are actually coming from houses. It shows burning, different types of burning, like very high temperature and just scorched bones. So it's a combination of producing and active living on site. There's also shellfish, as often some of it is burned, so we know they've been eating it. A lot of it isn't, which is probably for using as bait on the hooks for catching fish. And then the interesting thing, of course, is the Neolithic and where are the domestic animals. And we actually didn't have any in the midden, but we do have some in the grave as grave goods, as parts of the burials. So with that, I'll switch from the middens to the grave. And the grave is a little bit earlier. We have a few dates that really correspond to each other, but we are about to send the whole package of dates from all the humans, all of the ones that we think are separate humans, to the lab. And in the grave itself, we have cattle long bones, and one of the individuals was buried with the partial skull of a rather large horn core, indicating that it's maybe a bull or a castrate, an ox. So that's the gallery grave. This is how it looks when we removed basically all the fill-in, all the collapse, and before we actually, well, actually it's after we've excavated most of the skeletons. No, that's before. Sorry. So you can see some of it is still filled in with the sand. Just need to mention this. We had the geologists look at the stones, and it's a local rock. It's not Stonehenge. They're not moving the rocks from very far away. It's down the slope. Nothing special here. And it's a lot of good rock in the area. So when we excavated the actual gallery grave, just sort of three things to keep in mind as we go through it is that it was a large structure that had burials in it, and at some point it was divided into two structures that had more burials in it. And it's been used for probably a couple of centuries with people being buried. And when new people were coming in, they were sort of respectfully moving bones of the previous people into corners and stacking them up and moving new people in. So photogrammetry from the beginning of the excavation. What you can see here is the remnants of a agricultural layer or a plowed field from the Bronze Age. So all these arc marks are from the Bronze Age. It's quite nicely sealing the Neolithic phase. It's very clean. There was a lot of collapse, and all the stones from the roof have collapsed. So we just needed to clean it, clear it to see what exactly we are dealing with. Once we did that, some intact burials started popping up, and here we have one of the first individuals, an old man. In the northern chamber, in the southern chamber, we have another individual here, a young woman, and one of those bone clusters that I mentioned of the previous people who were in the grave. So I'll go just sort of one by one about the people. Just to mention this, this is probably the earliest phase, the whole thing. They've been burying people, we assume, everywhere. And then at the end, there have been bone clusters here. And the last person to be buried in this area, before it was closed off with this slab, and only that part was used, was this old individual. And right after him, there was a burial of a very young child, about 4 years old person. And they dug through his legs to put him in. So we know that these are the last two people in that part of the grave. Then it was closed off, and they used this part. We do not know if some of these bones in the chamber are part of the southern chamber, and we probably will not be able to find that sort of radiocarbon resolution in that but we're hoping to be able to match them genetically. So this is burial 1, and that's the person that was here. It's a male. It has advanced osteoporosis on all of his bones. It's laying, yeah, you can read that. It's laying on one side facing south. He's the oldest person in that burial. He is buried without horn core and some cattle bones. And he also has pathology, has the dish disease, which usually is associated with late Neolithic sites as well. So this may indicate a connection of these people migrating from Denmark. Mm-hmm. So Anna Thorbank, she's a human bioarchaeologist, and she's doing most of the analysis on human bones. And through her, we have collaborations with other places, with the DNA labs, with isotope labs. So this is the sort of plan of what we are actually doing. We're in the middle of the analysis of all of this Selje finds. So through osteology, the analysis was just completed last week. So some preliminary results include, for example, in this case, pathology on bone of the child. And there's some bone remodeling indicating probably a disease, which could have killed that girl probably. From peptide analyses, as you can see, it's quite reliable to find out the sex of the person. It's sort of same idea as with DNA, the Y and X chromosomes. We tried that, and we had quite good results on several of these people, but you needed teeth for that. With the aid of DNA, which we already started doing as well, we were able to redefine some of these. And then this is the most recent representation of actually the sex of the people that we have. And we have 3 different males in this area, all these males in this area. We have 1 female, which is the latest person in there. And then the child is also possibly a female. We don't have the genetic data for that, but we have the peptide work, and it seems it's a girl. Which is also interesting in itself, because during that period in Scandinavia, most of those gallery graves contained overwhelming majority of men. It's quite rare that there are actually women in them. Work on strontium isotopes as well from the teeth of 4 of those individuals. As you know, strontium is always tricky. It's all about baselines and local bedrock. At least in this case, we see some visibility that there is a bit of movement of some people are actually traveling quite far from where they lived. But other than that, it's uncertain yet. Whether they're coming in as new people or just moving a lot, we don't know. With the DNA work, of course, we would like to ask these questions. Who are they? Are they related to each other? Who else are they related to? There are 2 theories of sort of influx of the Neolithic populations to Denmark, to Norway. One is through Denmark and through the sea. One is through Sweden and Eastern Norway from the other directions, and they are distinct. We do not have enough information yet, but Morten will talk about a little bit about what we already have received from the DNA lab. And apparently a new method, identify the sand, is the one when you can, you need to have several different individuals, at least 4 or more, to be able to do it. And then you could have really looked into about 16 or so generations back in the data sets that we already have for Neolithic Europe. So we can actually quite, keep fingers crossed, can actually see really deep connections over large areas. And last not the least, proteomics. So this being Neolithic, of course, and this being Norway, and this being a place where there are not that many arable land and animals, secondary products, and being able to find out whether we get milk, whether it's sheep, goat, and cow, it will be quite important. And many of our teeth actually have quite a lot of calculus on them. So it's a high possibility we'll get pretty good readings. And I'll stop talking about bonds. I could go forever, but we'll go back to more.
Yeah. Just bring so you can see my notes. Okay, now we are back again for the late Neolithic scenario in Norway. What we see here is not people on the move, it's artifacts on the move. This is basically flint daggers. We have hundreds along the coast. And we can see the ones we have on the coast of Western Norway, they're coming from Jutland. In the east, they're more like coming from Scania and certain part of Sweden. There's also other artifacts flowing in, amber and things like that in different directions. But we see that there's a close contact suddenly with especially Jutland. In the same period also we see that the houses at the same types of the houses we have in the southern Scandinavia pop up. And we find in the pollen record and the macrofossils a lot of evidence for that agriculture start quite fast. So it's a period of profound economic and structural changes in the society. And basically what we see is like a full-blown like agriculture coming in. That's been the picture. But the problem is that we haven't had the graves for this before. We have graves from them in rock shelters. This is one excavated 100 years ago. Here it was like several individuals with one with dagger, but there was several dagger found there. Here's another rock shelter which I excavated. We have one person, and we also have sheep goat related to that period. Whereas these gallery graves we are seeing, they represent something completely new. And they are generally like regarded as in southern Scandinavia. That you can see them here. Here you can see the Danish one, and it's around 150 in Denmark, and there's 2,000 in Sweden. And these graves, they are somehow a continuation of the Middle Neolithic traditions, which is linked to the funnel beakers and the like grave monuments, which are megaliths. But also what we see here is the for Denmark, you have the so-called Singergrave culture, 2008 to 350, and they also have single graves that reminds us of these ones. In Norway, we have a small cluster of these ones, around 16, and most of them in the Oslo region, and probably they're linked to Sweden. Whereas in Western Norway, there is some possible ones, but really uncertain. So we like to say that we have the first like proper one of these ones. And one thing that have acted like some kind of necropolis, some kind for like family or kindship or things like that. Apart from other objects we find is these kind of things. That's like from Belgian culture. It's the exactly same shapes or inside the variations from the Gulf of Biscaya up along the coast in England and up all the way up to Norway. So I have a good set of that. We have a lot more than in the east and in the eastern Sweden. So that links us pretty well to Jutland again, which has many of those ones. So the grave we have at Selje, its closest parallel is in Sweden and Denmark, and it's a totally new way of burying people that is really distinct from the rock shelters. And maybe it's like related to kinship or something. And of course, it provides us a totally new way of looking at these people. And of course, also it's extremely interesting for people in further south because working with the southern Scandinavia, because we have an area that we didn't have any predecessing agriculture. So it maybe can say something of these later expansions coming around the third millennium all across Europe. But then, of course, what does this analysis we done? Do they say anything about who these people were? And as Konrad already said, like we only have been lucky to have results from two individuals. That's this HO1 and HO2. And you guys know sending quite a lot more to the lab in Sweden. So hopefully we will be able to get some more data out. So of course the things I will say, it's quite limited what you can say, but it might say something important about the population history and culture change in the late Neolithic along the western outpost of this Neolithic traditions of the late Neolithic. I'm not an expert in genetics at all, but I will just tell you a little bit based. I took two articles here because they're quite new and they tell us this story that we have already been seeing. The first people I already told you about was these people coming around 9000 BC to 9000 BC in Norway and a little bit before in Denmark and Sweden. And they are descending from late Paleolithic big game hunters further south. And we are usually grouping them in what we call like hunter and gatherers of Eastern and Western type. These ones. Around 4000 BC, something is happening in southern Sweden and southern Denmark, and that's the influx. You can see it of a new population coming with agriculture, and that's what we see there is that they are linked to the expansion from Anatolia, and they bring along the funnel bigger culture and establish that as the early Neolithic societies there. And then there's a lot of things going on, but then the next wave is this step wave during the third millennium. Coming in and to us up to Norway, to our areas in Scandinavia, it's probably in Sweden as well there, it's a lot of corny wear, but also it's linked to these bell-beaker things and this quite complex things. So what we have in Scandinavia, in South Scandinavia, is a dynamic pictures of people coming, like especially during the Neolithic, into quite big waves, and almost like there is a shift in population. But what about the Selje persons? In Western Norway, it looks like, based on that these things, that we have a situation where you have somehow a continuity of people all the way from the first settlers 11,000 years ago, and you have a mix of other people coming in who has more the step and ancestry. So two individuals. One seems to be of that the first type, and the other one seems to be of the other type. And there's also a thing that we have a third individual who has this mix with marine proteins, with 40% of that, and the rest is from land-based animals. So what we have, in fact, is a situation where we have a coastal society in transition, and new and old life has coexisted and interacted. So taken together, we can say that Western Norway stands out as both a refugium, where the last hunter traditions persisted, probably in Europe, at least in Northern Europe, and a coastal zone where genetic, economic, and cultural currents met in a dynamic network linking the sea and land. So we're looking extremely forward to the results, like coming hopefully like during the spring sometimes. So with that, I will end this preliminary interpretation of these results. Thank you.
Thank you for your attention. Questions and comments?
If I may, thank you. It was really fascinating. I started with a lot of questions, and gradually my questions were kind of answered. I still have questions though. It was the first time I hear and watch something from Norway in such a detail. So from this point of view, it was really fantastic for me. So starting with the questions, you said, if I don't got this wrong, you said that in this grave you have 8 individuals, more or less, probably more, we don't know, and within a time span of 200 years. No.
We estimate that to
You
be
estimate
about 100
that.
years, a few generations.
Okay, so I was wondering, this is not a huge population to find inside a grave within this broad time span. If I would put the question, who would you? And we also show that you kind of the grave was kind of included all kind of sexes, males, females, and even a child. So, because I don't have the knowledge of if these graves, this kind of, as you call them, it's gallery graves, is this a phenomenon that you find broadly in Norway? You said this is the first one that you find in Western Norwegian, which is really astonishing for me. I would expect that you have found more based on the settlements that you found, is it? So I was wondering, okay, so you have the settlements. What's the burial practices generally speaking? Is this something unique? Is this something common? Do you have graves? You also mentioned that you have people inside, buried inside, in caves and this kind of stuff. Who would you expect to find in this specific burial stuff? Is it a tradition? Is it some people selected from the population of these settlements? Just a few questions to start the discussion.
I can say one thing. Let's start with one thing. Is that one thing we didn't mention, which is really important. It's a debatable how many we have in Norway, but the distance to the Oslofjord is huge. With a boat, it will take many, many days. But in the Oslofjord region, we have maybe 15, 16, probably a bit less. But all the excavations there are very, very old, and the only one that contained several individuals, and that many, was excavated over 150 years ago. Over 100 years ago. So and the same is the case for Sweden and Denmark. Most of these gallery graves is excavated a long time ago. It's been like re-excavations. So therefore we have to be cautious about the things, because they maybe like there's a lack of due to the excavation techniques of bones and preservation, and we have like things like children like highly unrepresented. So it's difficult to say. But what we could say is that this is something that you don't have any tradition for in Western Norway. It could be that we find more than, but there's no predecessing tradition. In Sweden and Denmark, there have been agricultural history for 2,000 years, when we had this new innovation, this new grave form with collective graves. So for us, it's something totally new.
So, if you may ask, what's the burial tradition for this period in Norway?
Yeah. In Western Norway, the thing we know is from rock shelters, but it's hard to say also because there are so few burials. For the Mesolithic, it could also be like if you compare there and the earlier Neolithic, which were still hunter-gatherers, fissures, it's rock shelters, but it could also be like in wet deposits. So we have indications of that, and flat graves. There's a huge variation. Whereas this is more like a standardized thing, and that's the typical thing you see among hunter fishers. They have like a quite huge variation in the grave traditions, bird traditions.
What we see, at least here during that time, that this is This is a tradition, of course, in the Oslo Fjord and in Sweden and certain degrees in Denmark. I don't know where that map was.
No.
But it's coming. It's a new thing in Western Norway. Whatever it was there, it probably wasn't this.
No, and Oslofjord is on the that's here, and it's just on the outside of it because it's so here compared to very south.
Yeah. You had the map.
I
don't remember where it was.
It's in the end. Yeah.
Quite a lot of what we know about these type of graves and burial customs are from Sweden, where Morten mentioned there are several thousands of those graves, and most of them were excavated during antiquity, 1800s or 1900s. And we know about them. There are that many because they stand out in the landscape and they are protected, so they're not allowed to be dug. So this is a first excavation of something like that in all of Scandinavia that's being done with modern methods.
That was another question of the boat, if I may. Initially, I was wondering how you found it, and then you said it was part of a development project. And it's really interesting that you said the rest of this kind of the gallery graves you found them standing, so they were visible in the landscape.
Yeah,
they were 100 years ago where they were excavated. And so that's how they found them. And I was also wondering, development-led work throughout Europe is kind of Central Europe mainly, and also Eastern Europe is quite a thing that now it's really like the last 3 decades. It's been quite the leading thing for kind of research in archaeology overall, because they have these broad areas covered and excavated and geophysical analysis and all that. Is this also the case for Norway? I mean, how is research currently is led? Is it led from the universities on the context of a systematic excavation, a research project, or is it driven, let's say, from development-led projects as in the rest of Europe?
And what you can say, the Norwegian system is a bit different, but of course, like all parts of Europe is different. As I said, you have this 5 national museum, and it's. But the thing is that it's extremely strong collaboration between them. So all the systems, all the way of doing excavations, all the way of recording them digitally is done together. So we have this same framework and research infrastructure for things. That means that it's all also pretty standardized, and all of it is open access and things like that. So you can sit here and you can go in and see our excavations and get even the digital documentation, the 3D documentation out, and these kind of things. When it goes to the difference between research and rescue explorations, most of the explorations in Norway, or 95%, is rescue excavations. But still, with that system we have, also you can do quite a lot inside them. And this one we got also quite a lot of money extra for doing analysis and these things. So there is possibilities in these things.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you, especially on the way you're doing it, so organized and collaborates all the museums. A common system to work with. This is really fascinating, and I think this is the way forward nowadays. And it's been like for the last 3 decades at least. So I'm wondering about that because I have no idea.
No, and there's a new legislation coming, and we were all like part of it, like hearings, things like that, and of course we were like quite afraid if this thing about like as we see many places, this thing of privatization and these things would be reflected as suggested for new law. But on the contrary, like it's even more protected now. So the system we have now is that everything before 537 is protected, and it will be adjusted to 1650. That means that if you are in danger of destroying anything that linked to these periods or before, you have to pay for the excavation.
Even we have one more last question about going back to the graves again. So were these gallery graves in central areas of the settlement they were found, or they were detached in a distance? What was their spatial allocation? Were they like this? I guess they were visible to the population, but were they placed somewhere central or at the outskirts of the settlement, let's say?
Uh,
What would you
There is like one thing is situation in Sweden and Denmark, and then that's a bit different there also, like quite often high in terrain, these kind of things, but possibly also quite close to the farm. Here we see it's directly on the farm. It's like the distance is close, so you met your ancestors each day, and probably that's also like a symbolic, like the importance of the place and grave is that it's marking the land of the living and dead is in the same space, and it's in fact inside close to infields. And the reason why I placed it down on the beach is that the one who's on the shore placement curve, he means that it's been even closer, is that we have a lot of shells and other things that's washed up against it. So it seems to be that it's pretty close to the beach. That's his interpretation at least.
Maybe not exactly on the beach, but it's close enough for some seasonal storms to toss, shells and periwinkles on it. And with water, as gets everywhere, it will kind of trickle down. So we found some of that natural material inside the gallery grave. And then we also had Neolithic houses and post holes and series of post holes just in close proximity to the grave.
Yeah. So the model is here is this typical what we call the two buildings that is normal in that period.
We also do not know if there were more graves in that area, because actually when the hotel was built, that was before the legislature that Morten mentioned protected archaeology in that area. So quite a bit of that site was probably removed, maybe even most of it actually, because we had just a small plate.
Well, it was protected, but they didn't know it was anything there.
Yeah.
The law is actually from 1905, so it was established when Norway got independence, and it was the first law, in fact, in the parliament. And the actual reason for it was the founds of the last and the most spectacular Norwegian ships, this Oseberg ship, and it was discussions that the farmer might sell it to an American. So the first law as a free state was that law.
And there is more of that site going into undeveloped area, which is somebody's private home. So there could be more of these monuments. There could have been a larger funerary landscape in the area.
So you have done, I don't know, survey or geophysical perspection?
It wasn't part of the project.
And we did a little bit a part of they counted a little bit geophysical prospect,
But not in the.
No, not in this part coming up. But if we're gonna do something there, we might, and then we'll have a georadar for sure.
There's impossible projects maybe in a few years when the town is building a walkway as well, and that needs to be surveyed and protected, and it is protected, so there may be more there.
Or we do it like a small research thing and just take a georadar and see.
Great, thank you.
This might be a little bit of a stupid question, but the grave that you found, is it the same size approximately as other graves, or is it any different?
It's about this.
It reminds a lot, and the huge, in my impression, is that the variation is a bit larger in Sweden and these things. So I think for me it reminds more than the Jutland grave ones. But one problem also, and that's why I'm a bit cautious also about these gallery graves, because I do think a lot of these ones like called gallery graves in Norway or the 1516 are not gallery graves, and the same in Sweden. I don't think they're strictly gallery graves because there's not a strict definition of them, and that's what we're lacking. And they seem to have also, when you look at the data, seem to have quite a large time span. So it seems to be something that should be done, like going in and define them more properly.
But some of them, like the Swedish example, is rather similar, and I think the combination of size and how many people are in them, they tend to average, I think, around 12 people. 7 to 12 people on average.
And we have a typical division into 2 chambers. That's quite typical, for instance. There can also be several chambers, but it's quite simple. So the size and everything is quite typical.
But why is it called gallery grave? Or gallery, I mean, what is the...
I'm not sure why they call it in English gallery graves. We call it Hellekiste in Norwegian and Sweden, which is like stone built like monuments.
Okay, I'm
And
trying to find the Greek connection, you know.
And then you have the French ones that are the closest ones. That's the only one that's still used that time.
It's like cyst graves.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
cyst. Okay,
yeah,
because when I was reading it, gallery didn't ring a bell in a parallel.
I think it also has to do with like the placement of the cyst or of chambers within the grave. It's not one, but are several.
I think you're right. It has to do with that. That is a gallery inside. Yeah.
It's like the shape of a
like
corridor.
Yeah.
And there's also more than one chamber. And then we call them cyst graves.
But only one
chamber.
Sometimes, but I should say more.
So it kind of reminded that.
And it's a way probably also to separate them a bit for the megalithic structures that are before.
Yes.
So you showed us that the nutrition of the people there was based on fish consumption rather than domestic mammals. Is it a pattern that you have also observed in other contemporary settlements, given that there is the individual with the dental calculus that betrays milk consumption? What is the pattern in the other settlements?
I don't think we have that data.
Okay.
That's why this site is quite unique. That this actually is one of the first places in Western Norway to provide that information.
But what we see, which is a big puzzling, is that you see in the mountains that you have a lot of mountain sites that probably is connected to shielding activity. That's transhumans that we start already around that time with dairy production quite on a high level.
Okay.
But this was also just an example. We haven't done the calculus work yet. Just sort of, this is what's happening now. So the samples have been sent and waiting for results. So we don't have those readings.
But a surprisingly good amount of calculus in individuals.
It looks like even young people are developing it quite early.
Actually, I'm sorry. Probably a stupid question, but anyway, what's the financial cost of all that project?
Oh, that is it depends. I have to think now. Yeah, about like it's in fact quite low, not low, but it's a little bit like 2 million, a little bit over like
Kron.
no, euros.
Euros?
Yeah, euros. Yeah. So 22 million euros maybe. Yeah.
It's not parallel to.
No. I meant 2,200. No, 2.2 million. 2.2 million. I'm sorry, 2.2 million euros. About
But we ended up. But we also ended up hiring a zooarchaeologist to help analyze this for 2 years. So it's like quite a bit of extra.
Wow.
But most money went for, of course, for the excavation itself.
Yeah. But it's not. Well, I would say it's not a typical project.
No, but in cost we have several one that is 2 or 3 this year. It's the same size, for instance.
But it's a kind of a standard. I mean, even for Greece, you have a big development-led project. You excavate the whole settlement for, I don't know, 3 years.
Yeah.
This kind of money, even in Greece, is expected just for the excavation.
Yeah.
The problematic part is that we don't give money to analysis and study, but we do give the money for the excavation because the factory or whoever is the developer wants the area cleaned.
Yeah.
So
and here also we
Business thing.
we collaborate quite a lot with
business needs to be made.
with the local community and also with the monastery and then people over there to try to do some local public outreach and also with the ownership of the thing. That's quite important for us. So we use quite a lot of that also.
That was my question, actually, from a heritage policy standpoint. are there plans for
Mm.
people to visit the site? Is it included in the project?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
in general, what is the policy, given that most of the excavation are rescue
Mm.
and business are involved, etc., in the market? How is the policy of, the later stages of
Mm.
people visiting or schools or
Mm.
other interested? Is it something growing in Norway? Is it
Yeah.
there already?
It's there already, I would say. To a
Mm.
big extent, it's there. And
To most of the sites excavated, is there a plan for
Yeah.
visiting and rescuing?
not necessarily most, but a lot. A lot.
Okay.
We have our own part of it. It's the one we are just giving suggestion for the scientific part, and also suggestion for the
outreach,
budgets.
yeah.
And then it's the National Grand Ticket who decides if they agree with us or
Okay.
not.
Which to select.
But normally they agree with our budget again. But in that budget, there's normally like a percentage that is supposed to be used for public outreach. And also we can argue for a little bit more. For instance, here at the Selje thing, we had like a lot of popular talks and also visits, but we also introduced local strategy program to try to build like a new center for the monastery, which this is included, and also for hotel that we've been in contact with them and these kind of things also, because there's a lot of interest.
So the site will become part of the pilgrim route, which is associated with that big monastery, which is both actually still Catholic proper pilgrim route and also tourist attraction as well, because it's quite monumental.
Yeah.
So this is kind of being added. So that's.
And it's also like as told, there's also monasteries from both like the Catholic Church and Orthodox Church. We've tried to establish a monastery, but they've done that for over 50, 60 years, so they have a long-term perspective. But yeah.
Good luck for the project.
Yeah.
Sorry for killing the name. It's Selje and not Selje. And thank you so much for sharing this exciting project with us. We can continue with a glass of wine, and I'm sure there are more comments, questions, and a lot of interest from the Norwegian public. Actually, I should say that we have with us tonight 5 students from the University of Oslo studying teacher education. So we're very happy to share this lecture with them as well.
That's great.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, and thank you. I have to say thank you for us also to have the opportunity to sit there and work, and also for all the nice questions. Yeah.
This is also a way to introduce the Institute to you, because Morten and Konrad use the Institute for part of their research, and we're definitely seeing them back. So it's a way to integrate the Institute into your studies, hopefully in the future. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you.